Hi everybody, I can't be with you tonight. I created a problem. It's my problem and I'm trying to figure out a way to solve my problem. My problem is that I asked Pastor Jeff a while back, hey, if I'm going to preach on a Sunday, could you make it like a third or fourth Sunday of the month, though? Then it won't interfere with any of my parents' night classes, at least during the school year. So he did that. He's been great to do that. But because of our Mexico mission trip and because of Holy Week, we wound up moving our April Parents Night back to a night where I was already scheduled to be preaching. So right now I'm down in the sanctuary preaching, and I'm also down here with you, except you get this digital copy of me instead. But I'm hoping that this serves you really well. I hope that our conversation that you're going to have tonight as we talk about this last look in the Sticky Faith material, I hope that this really challenges you. And this is our last night together. And I asked you to read chapter 7 ahead of time, and I hope that you did. I hope that you found that to be a valuable read. But tonight we're going to talk about, yes, chapter 7, but we're also going to talk about the last chapter in the book, which is chapter 8. And I want to encourage you, as you go from here, take advantage of reading chapter 8 as well. I think chapter 8 is I think this is the best chapter in the book. And I think it is the one that speaks the loudest to the things that we're experiencing as parents. Now, I'll just name this, and I think I already have named this at some point during the year as well. But as I see my goal when it comes to working with students, like what is my role? I love to tell people that I see that my role is to graduate students out of our youth ministry. That's what our youth ministry is about. Not just my goal, but to graduate out of our youth ministry into the larger church as Christ-following, disciple-making students. I think that's a great goal for us to chase after. But the reality is that sometimes we get to just lovingly, and we love this, we think this is awesome. We watch students as they transition, and they do grow, and they're just right after high school. They're thriving members of the church. They're active in the church. It's really significant. Sometimes we watch as students, they wander, they drift from the church. Sometimes, maybe what it seems to be is that we don't even see them come back. Sometimes we do. Now, as I see my role within all of that, I see myself as an advocate. I see myself as one who gets to help find appropriate ways to connect students with the larger mission of the church. Maybe that means keeping them in the loop on what's going on for them in the church. That's not just youth ministry stuff. Maybe that's finding ways to get them involved in the church. Maybe that's also encouraging them to find ways to get to know different people inside the church. Now, one of the things that we know about adolescence is that adolescence it's a rocky road. It is difficult and it is painful. I want to share with you just a 2-minute long video. Fuller Youth Institute, people who have put together the Sticky Faith material, they've got a teaching component that's for teachers, and it can be used for families as well. And there is a 9-minute long testimony, basically, of a high school age or a post-high school age student who reflects on his high school years. And I want to show you 2 minutes of this clip. And as you watch this, the reality is that I'm seeing this clip and I'm thinking about, wow, adolescence can be painfully hard. It can be difficult. But how great is it when we're able to see stories of which that person has come out on the other side with a stronger walk with Christ. And that's a part of what we're going to talk about tonight. So just check out this story for the next couple minutes.
Probably one of the first things that I remember, at least in interacting with the church, is we had grown up in the church. My dad was an associate pastor. My mom was, choir director, Sunday school. We were there every day of the week, 2 or 3 times on Sunday. And so everything that we knew, at least about life, was in the church. But there was an evening, I've got an older brother, 18 months older, and a younger sister, 13 months. And there was an evening when we were at our pastor's house watching, the Ewoks and, them taking on the Imperial Stormtroopers. And we're watching this, and my mom calls us up into the pastor's bedroom. And, walk up there, and there's the pastor and his wife and another elder and stuff, and my mom on the bed, and you can tell she had been crying, and I was more concerned with that I was being pulled away from the Ewoks than what was going on. But So she sits us down, and she did it one by one. And I remember sitting there and had my popcorn, and she just tried to explain, something's happened, and your dad is going to go away for a long time. And what I remember comprehending at 6 was, Dad had committed a crime, and was going to go to jail for years and years, and wasn't going to see him for a while. And then my brother and sister came up, and it was all 4 of us, and mom's crying on the bed, and pastor's there trying to help us out, and just thinking, okay, well, so it's us 4, and I don't know what that means, I don't know what that is going to look like, but I just know Dad's not coming back. It was the months after that began to really kind of give shape to at least my thought on the church, and it wasn't good. It was a small town, and so everywhere we went, you would go into the diner, and they would open the newspaper, and there's your dad, getting sentenced. Or you would go to school, which was affiliated with the church, and it was the same kind of thing. And so the association that began to take place was simply church was, where you were mocked, where you felt judgment, where it was no longer safe. Throughout probably the majority of my my faith up until mid-20s, there was a duplicitous lifestyle.
In order for faith to develop on its own, right? That's our goal, is that our students, that faith will come alive in them. In order for that to happen, it has to happen on their own. And that means that there is this period called adolescence, that adolescence can be very, very messy. It also means that adolescence, this messy time, is filled with change. I don't know if you've seen the movie Inside Out. Me and my family, we've watched the movie Inside Out a few times. Our daughter is 9. Great movie, though, as far as teaching about what does adolescence look like. What are some of the changes that are around the corner? Story goes of a young girl who, of all places, is from Minnesota, and she moves to the West Coast with her family. At the very same time, she's experiencing adolescence and puberty and all these different factors that are happening in her life. And as these things happen, she's got all these changes that are being put right in front of her. Now, at the end of the movie, the fruit of the story is that we see all these changes, maybe things that she didn't want to have happen, but she comes out stronger for it. Now, here's the problem, though, when it comes to adolescence and being a parent and trying to influence our kids. The problem is this word called control. We like to have control. And as a dad, I will confess to you that I want to have control. That's just my personality in general. I want to be in control. I want to have control. I want to know what's going on. But at the same time, our hope is that our kids grow up, that they become their own unique individuals, the way that God has wired them to be. And as we name that, we name our issue. We want them to mature on their own, right? That should be our goal. But at the same time, we have a hard time of letting go. So control is very much, that is our issue. And in order for adolescent development to happen, it has to happen on its own. This means that we have to think about how do we try to control our kids? Sometimes we do. And maybe when they're younger, there's different ways, and there's a little bit more appropriate things that we can do. But even when they're older, I'm sure that there's things that we say or we do that actually they're part of us trying to control them. Maybe we don't like certain decisions, certain directions that a son or a daughter is going in, and maybe they haven't wanted to go to church for a long time, and then Christmas comes, and maybe we say it in a way that comes across like control, but hey, Johnny, would you go to church? This is what we do at Christmas. We go to church together, and we try to leverage something to get them to do what we want them to do. Or we're just looking for what might be that change factor that happens in their life, and we think, if you just had a boyfriend or a girlfriend that was such, why don't you go date such and such? Won't that just fix everything? Kara Powell, one of the authors of Sticky Faith, she says that following the plan will not work perfectly. That sometimes some of our students, they will drift. Sometimes they'll stick. Sometimes they'll drift, but they'll actually come back and they'll have deep roots. You know what? I can I can name, after working with students for a while now, I can name story after story of student who grew in their faith, yes, beautifully, it was wonderfully, and then it seems like a happily ever after story. I'm sure it wasn't a happily ever after story, it wasn't perfect. But I can name stories of students who, what seemed to be them walking with Christ, and then all of a sudden, they just distanced themselves from Christ. I can name students also who, yeah, they experienced that same walking and then distancing, but then also they came back to faith. Those are some of the stories that we get to work with, and that is very much, that is tied to the unpredictability of adolescence. And as you experience and you raise and come alongside your sons and your daughters, and you watch them as they mature, as you watch them as they make different decisions, one of the opportunities that's in front of us is this, is to appreciate even the good things that happen. And as those things, as we appreciate them, to do it with a sense of humility. The other thing is that as you experience those moments where you see things that you wish didn't happen in their lives, that you be reminded of the hope that's found in Jesus. Know that even in the darkest of times, that even then, God is still active. Here's some of the advice that Fuller Youth Institute gives for parents as they're looking forward to students going off to college. Months after graduation, students are going to be challenged with a host of new scenarios. They're going to be challenged, maybe it's at college, maybe it's not at college, maybe it's at some vocational school, maybe it's as they begin their working careers, but they're going to be challenged with people who believe and teach things that are so different than what they've perhaps been taught at home. Maybe even your son, your daughter goes off to a Christian college. As they go off to even a Christian college, they're going to be exposed to sometimes worldviews that are so different from that which you expected to have happen. So as you look at colleges, as you look at Christian colleges, is it a college that labels itself as Christian because there's many that do because that's where their giving comes from? Or is it a college that is distinctly, it is Christian? I would encourage you to kind of think about that as well. Students also, as they're experiencing life after graduation, they're challenged to think about things and opportunities in ways that they hadn't before. Perhaps it's relating to partying. Maybe it's how they relate to relationships, dating, and things like that. Maybe it's how they spend money. They're given all this new freedom, and it's like, wow, what do I do? Where do I start? How do I use this new freedom? So as students graduate, that's a part of what we need to be thinking about. At the same time, one of the other things that we really need to be thinking about is how, like, the first 2 or 3 weeks of college are some of the most significant weeks in the life of the college student, not because of the education that they necessarily are going to receive, but because the habits that they begin to develop in those first 2 or 3 weeks are habits that will most likely stick for the rest of their college experience. Studies show that 40 to 53%, something like that, of students who were committed, who were involved, who were connected with their church. So we're talking now about a smaller portion to begin with, but that group of students is that 40 to 53% is actually what will continue to get involved in the life of the church thereafter. And sometimes the reason why some of our students don't get plugged in thereafter college, thereafter high school, into some sort of college-appropriate ministry or another church is because they just don't know where to start. Sometimes the reason that they don't continue is that they don't know where to start. So when you go off to like a college visit, when you're checking out different things, make that a point. Show some options. Here's some churches that you might want to consider. Visit a church on a Sunday. Give them some different resources. Take the wisdom of page 161 as a really good kind of frame of reference. Page 161, really, really great page in here for you to consider as you think about what do my sons and daughters need to know as they go off to college. Be prepared. Know about what are your options. We're doing a graduate night this Wednesday with our seniors to kind of celebrate our seniors, to kind of set them up to know about what are some of the options for them as they transition out of youth group, hopefully into the life of the church, what else is out there? What are some of the age-appropriate things? So we've got some guests coming from Campus Crusade, from Fellowship for Christian Athletes, from Back Porch, because we think it's important that they know what is out there. Encourage your kids to have healthy habits. And that's going to involve modeling those habits to them, being in your word, in God's Word, regularly on your own. Going to church. If you just tell your students go to church, that's important, but it's not really important to you, okay, there's something there that might need to be said to your sons, to your daughters, like, hey, you know what? I haven't modeled this really well, but let's start this together. Let's start this habit. And prepare them for change. Prepare them to know and to be open and honest about things that might be put in front of them, the temptations and the different experiences and the different teachings, so that they're not caught off guard. Know that also the patterns that you establish with your students in the first 2 weeks, something that might help you is to establish those patterns would be Kara Powell in Sticky Faith. She talks about having a 2-week schedule. Putting into your schedule, your sons and daughters' schedule, help them to build that schedule so they know when their classes are, when their maybe work opportunities are, when their different responsibilities are, so that they know also when to block off opportunities to go to maybe a campus ministry or to go to church. Get them familiar with those options. Well, we've talked a lot. We've talked about a lot of different suggestions as we want to point our kids to Christ. I want to take you back over the top 3. These would be three of the top 4. We're going to save number 1. But these would be things that we've talked about over the year. One of them is to help our students experience intergenerational relationships at church. One of the biggest things that can impact a student is to know that there's other people in the church that care for them. That's also really good for as they transition out of high school. One of the other things is to give our students a sense of ownership, a sense that they belong in this church, that they're needed, that they have a value, that they can make a difference in the life of the church. Give them opportunities to serve. And then also recognizing that our students have questions. Like, there's difficult questions that our students want to have answers for. And we have an opportunity to give them our best shot at trying to answer those questions. Please also know this, that the number one factor comes back to parents. Parents, as we see our kids, as we see the decisions that they're going to make, we have opportunities to respond. We can respond sternly, we can respond with love, and we can respond with grace. And there is a difficult task there to respond with a balance, with a sense of love, amidst this new freedom that our students are experiencing. That's a really hard balancing trick to try to pull off. Our best role is always going to be the constant in their life as they muddle through adolescence. I mean, adolescence is hard, and research says that it maybe goes through age 25 as they're going through adolescence. To be the constant. Here's the bad news. Here's the bad news. It's that sometimes our kids will disappoint us. I know that. I'm a dad. I'm with you guys. Sometimes our kids will disappoint you. So as we think about that, how do we respect our kids even when they disagree with us? A part of this is going to be as we shower on them unconditional love, as we support them, as opposed to putting out different performance-driven standards. You know what? Kids are given standards all the time. Look like this, do this. Kids are also abandoned all the time. It's to stick with them. And a part of it is to know that yes, we want them to follow in our footsteps, right? That's what we want. But that doesn't mean that we push them into our footsteps. It means that we lead them, we model, we show them, and we pray for them, and we hope, and we rest, and we trust in what God is doing in their life. Page 180, I loved page 180 in Sticky Faith here. There's a poem called Daughter 17. I'll read the poem really quickly. I have a daughter, 17. When she lies to me, I love her. When she disappoints me, I love her. When she doesn't live up to my expectations, I love her. And when she reflects poorly on my name, I love her. Now I can understand how when she pleases you and obeys you and fulfills you, you say, but that's not what I'm talking about. It's when she does none of these things that I love her. And for a very simple reason. I'm her father, and she's my child. I think that's great. How do we love our kids all the time? What a challenge for us. And it's a great challenge for us to be thinking about. As I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about Luke chapter 15. I'm also thinking about a picture. I went to a Bible camp in Pennsylvania as a kid, and in the auditorium there hung this huge picture of Jesus as the shepherd looking for the lost sheep. And I just have this picture of what does the good shepherd do? The good shepherd, doesn't matter that there's 99 kids, 99 sheep that are safe in the pen. The good shepherd knows that there's one out there that says, you know what, I'm going to go find that one last kid. In the business world, we've kind of caught this kind of like, well, that's the cost of doing business when we have some sort of loss. That's not how it is with Jesus. There is no cost of doing business. Jesus pursues us even when we are at our most lost. Luke chapter 15, I'll read it for you. Luke chapter 15 tells the parable of the good shepherd who goes looking for that lost sheep. Now the tax collector and the sinners who were all gathering around to hear Jesus. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." Then Jesus told them this parable. "Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? And when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulder and goes home. Then he calls his friends and his neighbors together and says, 'Rejoice with me, I have found my lost sheep.' I tell you that in the same way there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who do not repent." You know, as we think about who Jesus is, this isn't the truth of what we go to when everything else falls apart. This truth about who Jesus is, this is our rock. Jesus is not plan B. He is our hope throughout. And when your kids, when maybe they seem like they're walking away from God, know this, that despite all of maybe our efforts that seem to be going nowhere, that we have a God who walks with them through all of it. Again, thank you for honoring this time and setting this time aside over this last year to be at our Parents' Night. I hope that what we've talked about is valuable. I look forward to picking up this conversation next fall. Next fall, we'll take a look at some different material that will complement what we're looking at or what we have looked at. Okay, if you're the parent of a student who is going into 9th grade and has done 3 years, they're finishing now their 3rd year of confirmation, this is the mission critical stuff that you need to know. And I'll just take you through and remind you of our course requirements. Students were expected to have done 15 Growing by Serving credits this last year. Over the lifetime of their time in our confirmation classes, they would have experienced 3 different retreats or camps at Inspiration Point. They would have also, every year, they would have taken 15 sermon notes, in addition to regular attendance and regular participation. And I just named that because over the summer, you're going to hear about some changes that are going to be happening in our expectations for confirmation. Those changes in expectations will affect those students that are entering into grades 6 through 8 of this upcoming fall. So those of you that are getting confirmed next year, you can look at like, hey, you've done what you were supposed to do. And the reason that I just named that is that I've spent the last 8 months just looking at ways to strengthen and enhance our confirmation efforts, and at the same time to increase parent participation. So those are some of my goals that I have for the next year. You're going to hear how they're implemented, but know that they don't affect your expectations. Here's the date of the 9th grade retreat. We have a retreat October 7th and 8th. We hold it in Inspiration Point. We leave early that Saturday morning at 7 o'clock, and we'll come home about 1 o'clock in the afternoon that Sunday. And the point of the retreat is to set our students up as they continue to grow in Christ after confirmation, to do a little bit of processing with them about what they've experienced over their 3 years in confirmation, to challenge them, and to also talk about what they need to know for overhearing, practice, get ready for it, and to set them up for Confirmation Sunday as well. We'll name that cost. We're pretty close to having the cost finalized, but we'll name that cost as that gets closer. But I think the date is the most important thing for you to know. Overhearing. Overhearing will be October 25th. That is a Wednesday night. That'll happen at 7:30 at either campus. I encourage you to bring friends, to bring family to it. It's a great, great night. And the memory questions that students are given, that they're assigned in advance, that is the night that they will need to know those things. Ninth grade interviews, next thing to tell you, those will happen August 28th through 31. I'm hoping to take care of those like it's not school. We can do those during the business hours. We're not trying to cram things in after youth group at different times. And if somebody's unable to make any of those appointments, we'll try to schedule some as needed. But that's the primary opportunity for those. They are really, really important that you attend them, that you make sure that they happen. That is when, and we do this on purpose, but that is when the memory work that is needed for overhearing is given out. So if you're looking for your memory work, that's when we give it out. Then I'll also remind you of this, that youth group attendance, that beginning once youth group starts in September through Confirmation Sunday, that youth group that's the only requirement that we have next fall for your students. And the reason we do it is we want them to get really comfortable with going to youth group. We're really hoping that they'll continue going to youth group, and it's part of the way that we do some transition. We will take attendance during that time as well. And then the date for Confirmation Sunday will be October 29th. That'll happen at the second service at either of the campuses. And then later that night at 6 o'clock at both of the campuses, myself and I believe Pastor Doug, we will do the communion service that will be given and offered for students and their families. It's a great time for students to have communion, to kind of conclude this season in their life and to set them up for what lies ahead. So I'm hopefully now in the room, and as I'm in the room, if you want to ask me any questions, that I hope that you're able to do that now. Thank you.